Welcome to another episode of World of Africa on WION World is One. Thank you for joining us. This week, Kenya remains on the precipice. Weeks and months of protests is forcing the William Ruto administration to crumble down. And as a result, the government is using the police to vent or take it out to the citizens. The police have been accused of collaborating with goons to mete out violence against demonstrators, most of whom are young people or Gen Z. And all this under the direction of government officials, including the country's interior minister. We talk about what's happening in East Africa's economic powerhouse shortly. The show starts now. The United Nations expressed serious concerns over the deaths of at least 11 people in Kenya, where police and protesters clashed during anti-government demonstrations the previous day. The violence erupted on Sabasaba Day, when demonstrators annually mark the events of July 7, 1990, when Kenyans rose up to demand a return to multi-party democracy after years of autocratic rule by then-President Daniel Arap Moi. Governance and leadership is a deep-rooted issue in Kenya, and these protests may now be a normal occurrence for a while to come. Here is our cover report. Kenya has been on the decline for quite some time now. The protests on the 7th of July this year were a culmination of build-up anger towards the government of William Samoei Ruto. The protests coincided with the anniversary of the 1990 Sabasaba rally, a landmark demonstration that helped push Kenya towards multi-party democracy. Kenyan police opened fire on a charging crowd of protesters. Throughout the morning, anti-riot police patrolled the streets, deploying tear gas and water cannons to disperse demonstrators, while heavily armed police officers stood guard near armored vehicles. Streets were strewn with stones and spent tear gas canisters as protesters regrouped in various parts of the city. Despite the crackdown, protesters have continued to face off with police and a sustained and heavy security presence. In the end, 11 people lost their lives in the recent skirmishes.
We are deeply troubled by the killings yesterday of at least 10 people, as well as looting and destruction of property in Kenya as police and other security forces responded to violent protests in the capital of Nairobi and at least 16 other counties. Lethal ammunition, rubber bullets, tear gas, and water cannons were used.
Just like in the recent riots, police brutality was on the spot, with security personnel accused of using force on the protesters, inflicting serious injuries on dozens, maiming others, especially the youth. When in actual sense, the reason why most people went to the streets was to voice their displeasure at how security forces were treating them. This has forced the country's human rights groups and opposition to react.
I propose that the country urgently returns to the agenda of comprehensive police reforms, focusing on enhancing accountability, transparency, and improving the police-to-people relationship. Your rogue police force that shoots people with impunity. And this is a force that we inherited from the colonialists. We must end impunity and corruption within our three arms of government. Our leaders must become modest, ethical, humble, and accountable.
The country's Interior Minister, Kipchumba Murkomen, has been accused of sowing discontent when he issued orders of shoot to kill to the police, a statement that has irked many Kenyans.
It is now clear that there was no protest, it was chaos, anarchy. Parliament was being targeted, and State House was being targeted. Those who planned this chaos had a very premeditated plan.
The dust has settled for now, but accountability remains a huge concern for many Kenyans.
I didn't do any work yesterday. I had only tea in the morning as breakfast and my lunch, and in the evening I had kale for supper because I had no option. If I had gone to work yesterday, I had planned to at least have eggs and a decent meal with my family. I never made any money at all. I only wish the government, whether we like it or not, listened to the cries of the people.
To every police officer.
Amid all the melee and displeasure towards the Kenyan president, Ruto made a shocking announcement early this month. The president says he's building a church at the State House in Nairobi, that he will pay for himself, and says he has nothing to apologize for. That statement alone has angered Kenyans already frustrated with his style of leadership and what they regard as the entanglement of the state and the church. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One. Uganda's long-serving 80-year-old president, Yoweri Museveni, has been declared the governing party's candidate in next year's presidential election, opening the way for him to seek to extend his nearly 40 years in power. In his acceptance speech, Museveni said that he had responded to the call and, if elected, would press ahead with his mission of turning Uganda into a high middle-income country. Here's a report.
Yoweri Museveni's critics say he has ruled with an iron hand since he seized power as a rebel leader in 1986. He has won every election held since, and the Constitution has been amended twice to remove age and term limits to allow him remain in office. Pop star turned politician Bobi Wine is expected to be Museveni's main challenger in the election. Wine would run against Museveni if he was nominated by his party, the National Unity Platform, but it was getting tougher to be in opposition because of growing state repression. Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, lost the last election in 2021 to Museveni by 35% to 59%, in a poll marred by allegations of rigging and a crackdown on the opposition. Another prominent opposition politician, Kizza Besigye, has been in detention since November after being accused of treason. He denies the allegation, saying his arrest is political. In his acceptance speech at the National Resistance Movement conference on Saturday, Museveni said that he had brought about stability and progress in Uganda. He said it was crucial that Uganda does not miss the bus of history as happened in the past when Europe transformed and Africa stagnated and was enslaved.
I hope the whole membership of the NRM and its structures will support my candidature as the chairman of the NRM for the 2025-2031 period, and also as flag bearer for the NRM in the presidential contest for the 2026-2031 period.
Tensions have risen in recent months after Parliament passed a law allowing military courts to try civilians, a practice the Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional in January. The government insisted the change is necessary to tackle threats to national security, but rights organizations and opposition figures argued it is a tool to intimidate and silence critics. Uganda for years has used military courts to prosecute opposition politicians and government critics. Human Rights Watch has criticized Uganda's military courts for failing to meet international standards of judicial independence and fairness. Museveni said he seeks re-election to transform Uganda into a $500 billion economy in the next 5 years. According to government data, the country's current GDP stands at just under $66 billion. Ugandans are due to vote in January to choose a president and members of parliament. Africa Bureau, WION World is One.
The Namibian government has announced a temporary ban on state funerals amid criticism over the rising costs of these burials. Only President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has the powers to exempt funerals on the moratorium, which has been extended until March next year. A new 7-member review committee will also be established to come up with the terms of reference and proposals on how state and official funerals should be granted going forward. Here's a report from Windhoek.
The suspension of Namibia's state funerals marks a significant turning point in the country's governance and public spending culture. Sparked by growing public outrage over the rising costs of these ceremonies and the opaque manner in which funds are allocated. The Namibian government has bowed to mounting pressure to reform what has long been seen as a sacred but costly tradition. The government has not said whether the decision was related to mounting criticism of the increasing costs of the numerous state funerals as reported by local media. The Windhoek Observer, a privately owned publication, said calls for the moratorium had been made as far back as 2021, when the rising cost of official burials came under scrutiny, especially at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. It quoted Prime Minister Elijah Ngorare, who earlier this year revealed that official funerals had cost the government $38.4 million Namibian dollars, which is $2.2 million in the 2024-2025 financial year. By comparison, only $2.1 million Namibian dollars was spent on 23 funerals during the 2022-2023 financial year, according to the news site. The Observer said the state had spent 30 million Namibian dollars just to transport the body of founding President Sam Nujoma around the country ahead of his state funeral in February this year. Nujoma, who died at the age of 95, led the long fight for independence from South Africa after helping found Namibia's liberation movement, the Southwest Africa People's Organization, in the 1960s. After independence, Nujoma became president in 1990 and led the country until 2005. The critique of state funerals mirrors this wider continental pattern of misplaced priorities. Lavish ceremonies, often billed as symbols of national pride and remembrance, become vehicles for inflated contracts, political patronage, and hidden commissions. The expenses go beyond caskets and wreaths. They include transport logistics, catering, accommodation, media coverage, and security. These costs, when examined critically, offer little return on investment for ordinary citizens. In a nation where more than 1 million people are food insecure, spending millions on burial events cannot be morally justified. Namibia's move to pause state funerals is not merely a cost-cutting measure, it is a recognition that government legitimacy rests on responsible stewardship of public funds. Africa Bureau, WION World is One.
On a tiny island in Uganda's Lake Victoria, local fishermen have created a rare harmony with nature, guided by strict cultural traditions and spiritual beliefs. But with growing interest from tourists, there are fears this fragile coexistence could soon be at risk. Here's a report.
This is Musamba, or Ghost Island. One of 84 islands in Lake Victoria, this 5-acre piece of land plays host to a diverse ecosystem. The island's small human population lives in harmony with the local wildlife, including colonies of birds and several species of snakes.
The island became known as it is today because of the things found on it. Even when you came and moved around, you only found men on it. The second thing is, there are lots of birds on the island, and the third, there are snakes here that are friends with humans.
Over the years, Musamba Island's unique natural beauty has attracted numerous researchers and conservationists.
There are many narratives. As far as the origin of the name Musamba is concerned, but from the Luganda language, the moment you hear Musamba, you know what it means. For some people, it is if you translate to English, probably you may not get the right, version of it. But in Luganda, it will be a Musamba. In English, it will be a spirit or a ghost. So, and the narrative on the island is that this spirit is manifested in the snakes, and the Musamba, the spirit or this ghost, doesn't like women on the island, and that's why they tell you they don't allow women on the island. If a woman goes on the island and spends a night there, the Musamba will get annoyed, and when it gets annoyed, it will cause havoc.
About 2,000 snakes are thought to reside on the island, including the venomous Gaboon viper and the Egyptian cobra. The fishermen believe these snakes possess supernatural powers and act as protectors of the island and its inhabitants. The island is also considered a spiritual site and is often visited by individuals seeking blessings or spiritual guidance.
People were very few on the island back then, not more than 5 people. I came here from Kabuoko to fish, and since then I have never left.
Growing awareness of the existence of the island, however, threatens to destabilize this natural atoll. For now, though, Musamba continues to serve as an example of how man can coexist with nature. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One.
South Africa's first black female beer brewery owner is aiming to shake up the industry at her Brewster Academy in Johannesburg. Apiwe Malewa trains young black science graduates, most of them women, in the art of beer brewing. Here is her story.
I wanted to make sure that being the first black female to own a brewery in South Africa, that I'm not the first and the last. And I figured the only way I could make that happen is having the academy where I have control in terms of developing the next wave of brewers and not just relying on other people to deliver on the mandate. Academy for me is about transforming the industry, bringing about the change that we need to see in the industry, and not waiting for someone else to do it, but work with people that are wanting to have the transformation take place. What I want to see is that in 5-10 years from now, that it should be a norm to have Black people in the industry, it should be a norm to have females in the industry.
Musical icon Angélique Kidjo has become the first Black African performer to be selected for a star on the prestigious Hollywood Walk of Fame. Kidjo, who comes from the West African country of Benin and has won 5 Grammy Awards, was among the 35 names announced as part of the Walk of Fame's Class of 2026 list. The 64-year-old was hailed as Africa's premier diva.
Angélique Kidjo was hailed as Africa's premier diva during a press conference announcing the list on Wednesday. Singer Miley Cyrus, actor Timothée Chalamet, actress Demi Moore, and former basketball player Shaquille O'Neal are also among those set to be honored with a star on Los Angeles' famous walk. Kidjo receives the honor after making music for more than 4 decades and releasing 16 albums. The songstress has won fans across the world with her commanding voice and ability to fuse West African styles with the likes of funk, jazz, and R&B. Her long list of collaborators includes forces such as Burna Boy, Philip Glass, Sting, and Alicia Keys. What stimulates me in music is the music itself, the power of music, the strength of music. There is no discrimination in music. There's no judgment in music. When you write, you write. Music makes us understand that emotion has no color, no language, no nationality, no borders. Kidjo joins Charlize Theron, a white South African actress, in representing Africa on the Walk of Fame, which comprises more than 2,700 stars. Theron received her star in 2005. The date on which Kidjo will see her star unveiled on the Walk of Fame has not yet been announced. After recipients have been selected for a star, they have 2 years to schedule induction ceremonies. Kidjo grew up in Benin but left for Paris in 1983, citing oppression from the country's then communist government. Kidjo worked as a backing singer in France before striking out as a solo artist in 1990 with the album Parakou.
Things has been changing for the last decade in music, in art in general, and why won't the business change? The thing is, we are part of the world. I mean, the largest population of youth is in Africa. We have more things to bring to the table than any other continent on the planet. So I'm very happy that the African people that are coming here, they are taking the lead in selling what they have and to do business with us in an equal right and an equal basis.
She is a UNICEF and Oxfam Goodwill Ambassador and has her own charity, Batonga, which is dedicated to supporting the education of young girls in Africa. Africa Bureau, WION World is One.
That's all the buzz in Africa this week. All our social media platforms are open. Talk to us there. Your story matters to us, always. Thank you for watching World of Africa on WION World is One. I'm Eric Njoka. I will see you on the next episode.
where darkness hides behind every corner, where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders, psychopaths who defy explanation, international war crimes, and millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
The Earth is sending